What's up, Bears Nation? Welcome back to Bears News Fan Report, your trusted source for breaking news, insider updates, and everything happening with our beloved Chicago Bears. Today, I've got something that's going to stop you in your tracks, something that connects dots you probably haven't even noticed yet. The decisions being made right now in Halas Hall aren't random, they're not coincidental, and when you start putting the pieces together, a picture emerges that nobody's talking about publicly, but everyone in this building is thinking about privately. I'm going to walk you through something that's been developing quietly over the past few weeks, and by the time we're done here, you're going to understand why the next few months might completely redefine what we thought we knew about the future of this franchise. So stick with me because this goes deeper than you think, and the implications are massive for every single one of us who bleed orange and blue. The Chicago Bears are at a fascinating inflection point right now. We've spent the last 2 years building something real, assembling talent, creating depth, and transforming this roster from a laughingstock into a legitimate competitive team. For the first time in what feels like forever, we're not talking about foundational rebuilding anymore. We're talking about reinforcement. We're talking about taking a good team and making it great. But here's where things get interesting. And here's where I need you to pay close attention, because the details matter. When organizations shift from rebuilding to reinforcement mode, every single decision they make tells you something about their long-term vision. Every draft pick, every free agent signing, every roster move is a statement about what they believe and who they're building around. And right now, as we look ahead to the 2026 draft, the Bears are making decisions that should have all of us asking some very serious questions. I've been studying the early projections, talking to people around the league, analyzing what's happening with our roster construction, and something doesn't add up. Actually, multiple things don't add up, and when you connect them all together, you start to see a pattern that suggests the organization might be preparing for a future that looks very different from what we expected just a few months ago. Let me paint you a picture of what's happening. The Bears are expected to be picking around the 25th overall slot in the first round of next year's draft, which tells you right there that we're projected to have a solid season this year. That's good news, but it's not about where we're picking, it's about who we're looking at picking. According to multiple draft analysts and scouts I've been following, Chicago's primary target at that spot is an offensive lineman named Caleb Lomu from Utah. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another boring offensive line discussion, hear me out because this is where the story gets really interesting. Lomu is a left tackle, one of the premier tackle prospects in this entire draft class. Big, athletic, physical, exactly the kind of player you build a championship offensive line around. But here's the thing that should make every Bears fan stop and think. We already invested heavily in our offensive line. We've got established veterans like Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman, and Jonah Jackson on the interior. We've got Darnell Wright locked in at right tackle, and we used significant draft capital in 2025 on a Day 2 pick named Ozzie Trapilo, specifically to develop at the tackle position. So why, after all that investment, after all those resources poured into protecting the quarterback and building a dominant offensive line, would the Bears be targeting another tackle in the first round of the very next draft? Why would you use your most valuable draft pick on a position you theoretically already addressed? The answer that the analysts are giving publicly is that left tackle remains an area where stability has been elusive. They'll point to Theo Benedet's struggles. They'll talk about Trapilo still being developmental. They'll say you can never have too much talent on the offensive line. And all of that is true on the surface. But I want you to think about what this really means, what it's actually saying about how the organization views the future. When you draft a left tackle in the first round, you're not just adding depth. You're making a long-term investment in protecting your most valuable asset, which is supposed to be your franchise quarterback. You're saying that this player is going to be anchoring your offensive line for the next decade, keeping your quarterback upright, giving him time to operate, ensuring his career doesn't get derailed by injuries or constant pressure. But here's the question that nobody's asking out loud. Who is that franchise quarterback they're protecting? Because if you're confident that Caleb Williams is your guy for the next 10 to 15 years, if you truly believe he's the answer at the most important position in sports, then investing a first-round pick in his protection makes perfect sense. That's exactly what you should be doing. But if there are doubts, if there are concerns, if there are conversations happening behind closed doors about whether Williams is actually the long-term solution, then drafting an elite left tackle starts to look less like reinforcement and more like preparation for what comes next. Think about the timeline here. Williams is in the middle of his rookie contract right now. By the time we get to 2026, we'll be approaching the point where the organization has to make a decision about his fifth-year option. That's the inflection point where teams either commit to their quarterback long-term or start exploring alternatives. And if the Bears are already positioning themselves to have an elite offensive line in place, regardless of who's under center, that tells me they're not ready to fully commit to Williams as the guy yet. But it goes deeper than just the offensive line. Look at the rest of the projected draft strategy. In the second round, Chicago is targeting an edge rusher named Akeem Mesidor from Miami. In the third round, a cornerback named Keontae Scott, also from Miami. In the fourth round, a defensive lineman named David Oke from Arkansas. Fifth round, safety Bishop Fitzgerald from USC. Sixth round, another edge rusher, Patrick Payton from LSU. Seventh round, linebacker Eric Gentry from USC. Notice a pattern here? 7 picks in this mock draft, and only one of them is dedicated to the offensive side of the ball. Every other selection is focused on defense, on building up that side of the roster, on creating waves of pressure and lockdown coverage. Now, why would an organization that supposedly has their franchise quarterback in place be so heavily invested in defense? Historically, when teams have elite quarterbacks they believe in, they surround them with offensive weapons. They draft wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, more offensive linemen to open up running lanes. They build an offense-first mentality because they know their quarterback is good enough to carry them if given the right tools. But when teams aren't sure about their quarterback, when there are doubts about whether he can elevate the players around him, they shift to a defense-first approach. They try to build a team that can win despite the quarterback position, not because of it. They create an environment where the defense keeps games close and the quarterback just has to manage the game, not win it. And that's exactly what this draft strategy suggests. The Bears are building a roster that can compete at a high level regardless of who's playing quarterback, and that should concern every fan who's been sold on Williams as our savior. I'm not saying Williams has been a bust. I'm not saying he can't develop into a great quarterback, but I am saying that the organization's actions suggest they're not ready to bet the franchise on him yet. And more importantly, they're positioning themselves to have options if things don't work out. Here's another piece of the puzzle that fits into this narrative. The Bears are projected to be picking 25th overall, which means they're expecting to win somewhere between 9 and 11 games this season. That's solid, that's progress, but it's not elite. It's not the kind of record that screams franchise quarterback carrying his team to greatness. It's the kind of record that suggests you've got a good roster, good coaching, solid defense, and adequate quarterback play. And adequate is the key word there. Adequate gets you to 9 or 10 wins. Adequate gets you in the playoff conversation. But adequate doesn't win championships. And it doesn't justify turning down a fifth-year option or offering a massive contract extension. So here's where the speculation really starts. And here's what I think might actually be happening behind the scenes. I believe the Bears are giving Williams this season and potentially next season to prove he's the guy. But they're simultaneously preparing for a scenario where he's not. They're building a roster that's quarterback agnostic, one that can win with a game manager, one that can compete at a high level while they search for their true franchise quarterback. And if Williams continues to show flashes but never quite puts it all together consistently, if he continues to be good but not great, adequate but not elite, then I think there's a real possibility that Chicago moves on from him after his rookie contract. Maybe they draft someone in 2027. Maybe they make a play for a veteran quarterback who becomes available. Maybe they trade Williams to a team desperate for a young quarterback and use those draft picks to continue building this roster. The point is, the organization is keeping its options open, and that's what smart franchises do. They don't fall in love with players based on draft position or potential. They make decisions based on production, on results, on whether someone is actually elevating the team to championship contention. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm rooting for Williams to succeed. I want him to be our guy for the next 15 years. I want him to silence every doubt, prove every skeptic wrong, and lead us to multiple Super Bowls. But I also understand that hope isn't a strategy, and blind faith doesn't win championships. We have to be honest about what we're seeing on the field and what the organization's actions are telling us about their level of confidence. The reality is that quarterback is the hardest position to evaluate in all of sports. Some guys take years to develop, some never do. Some show flashes of brilliance but can't sustain it. Some are system players who look great in one scheme and terrible in another. And right now, Williams is still figuring out who he's going to be at this level. The Bears are giving him every opportunity to succeed, building a strong offensive line, surrounding him with weapons, providing excellent coaching. But they're also hedging their bets, making sure they have the infrastructure in place to compete regardless of what happens at quarterback. And that hedging, that preparation for multiple scenarios, is what's leading to all this speculation about his long-term future in Chicago. Before we wrap up here, I want to hear from you. Do you think the Bears are fully committed to Caleb Williams as the franchise quarterback, or do you see the same concerning patterns I'm seeing in their roster construction strategy? Are you comfortable with how Williams has performed so far, or do you think it's fair to already be having conversations about Plan B? The draft strategy pointing toward heavy defensive investment and quarterback-agnostic roster building suggests the organization isn't ready to fully commit to Williams yet. And while that's disappointing for those of us who hoped he'd be the immediate answer, it might actually be the smart, patient approach that leads to sustained success. Make sure you're subscribed to Bears News Fan Report and hit that notification bell so you never miss our breaking coverage and in-depth analysis. We're here every single day bringing you the latest news, the honest conversations, and the insider perspectives that matter most to Bears fans. If you found this analysis valuable, hit that like button and share this video with your fellow Bears faithful. Let's keep this discussion going, and as always, Bear down.